Chapter 11. The Parcel Post System, Mailing Goods to Every Door, 1913. The year is 1912. The United States is a nation of letters. We have mastered the art of moving paper. We can send a love note across the continent, a business contract across the ocean, and a newspaper to a remote farm. But we cannot send a toaster. We cannot send a pair of boots. We cannot send a winter coat. For decades, the U.S. mail was strictly an intricate nervous system for the written word. If you wanted to send a physical object, a package, you were at the mercy of the private express companies. These were the giants of the era: Wells Fargo, Adams Express, American Express. They were efficient, but they were expensive. And, more importantly, they were selective. They went where the railroads went. They served the cities and the depots. But if you lived 10 miles down a dirt road, the express wagon did not come for you. You were cut off from the material abundance of the industrial age. Chapter 11 of our history is the story of how the government decided to break this bottleneck. It is the story of Parcel Post. It is a story that transforms the mailbox from a slot for paper into a portal for everything. It is the story of how the department store came to the doorstep, how a bank was built out of bricks sent through the mail, and yes, how a few parents decided that the safest way to transport their children was to put a stamp on their coat. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we must wait for the stroke of midnight. The date is January 1st, 1913, New Year's Day. For months, the Post Office Department had been preparing for this moment. They had printed special stamps, a beautiful series in Post Office Red depicting trains, factories, and steamships. They had distributed tape measures and scales to thousands of postmasters. They had issued complex maps dividing the country into zones. The law was simple but revolutionary. You could now mail a package weighing up to 11 pounds, this limit would soon rise, to any address in the United States for a fraction of the cost of the private express lines. At the stroke of midnight, the doors of the main post offices in New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia swung open. The scene was not of solemn bureaucracy, it was a carnival. People had stayed up late, clutching their bundles, waiting to be part of history. The first packages to slide across the counters were ceremonial. The Postmaster General, Frank Hitchcock, mailed a silver cup to the new president-elect, Woodrow Wilson. In New York, the first package was a crate of apples. But then came the flood. Let us visualize the interior of a post office on that first week of January 1913. The air is filled with the scent of fresh pine crates, brown wrapping paper, and the sharp tang of sealing wax. The sound is a heavy, rhythmic thumping, thud, thud, thud. The American public, realizing the liberty they had been given, began to mail everything that wasn't nailed down. They mailed laundry. They mailed coffins, empty, one hopes. They mailed pitchforks. They mailed eggs. The egg problem was a significant obsession of the early parcel post. The government wanted to connect the farmer directly to the city consumer. They envisioned a world where a housewife in Brooklyn could write to a farmer in New Jersey, and the farmer would mail her a dozen fresh eggs. But eggs are fragile, and mailbags are heavy. This led to a wave of invention. The metal egg crate, the suspension box. Manufacturers raced to create containers that could survive the rough and tumble of the mail car. If you listen closely to the history of 1913, you can hear the faint, tragic crunch of thousands of broken eggs, but also the triumph of the ones that arrived whole, bringing the taste of the country to the city table. But the true giant that awoke in 1913 was not the egg farmer. It was the catalog. We must turn our gaze now to Chicago, to a massive brick complex on the west side. This was the headquarters of Sears, Roebuck & Co. Before Parcel Post, Sears and its rival, Montgomery Ward, shipped their goods by freight train. The customer had to go to the railway depot to pick up their order. It was cumbersome. Parcel Post changed the equation. Now Sears could ship directly to the farmhouse mailbox. The catalog, often called the Consumer's Bible or the Wish Book, became the most read book in rural America, second only to the Holy Bible itself. Let us hold this book in our hands for a moment.
It is heavy. It has over 1,000 pages. The paper is incredibly thin, almost like newsprint, to keep the mailing weight down. It has a distinctive smell, a mix of cheap ink and dust. You turn the pages. The illustrations are intricate woodcuts or steel engravings. Page 402, a Stradivarius model violin for $3.95. Page 615, a cast iron parlor stove with nickel trim for $11.45. Page 800, Dr. Hammond's nerve and brain tablets. Page 950, a kit to build an entire house, lumber, nails, and paint included. For a family living in isolation, this book was a window into a glittering world. In the evenings, after the chores were done, the family would gather around the oil lamp. The catalog would be opened. This was window shopping for people who had no windows to look into. They would dream. A young girl would circle a ribbon she wanted. A father would study the specifications of a new cream separator. And when the decision was made, the ritual of ordering began. The order form was filled out in pencil. The money order was purchased from the rural carrier. And then the wait. The wait for a package is a specific psychological state. It's a mix of anticipation and faith. And in Chicago, the Sears plant was a marvel of logistics that rivals the modern Amazon fulfillment centers. It was a city within a building. Orders arrived by the sackload, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 orders a day. They were opened by a small army of clerks. The orders were sent via pneumatic tubes, whoosh, thump, to the various departments spread across the millions of square feet of floor space. The picker in the shoe department would grab the boots. The picker in the hardware department would grab the hammer. But how to get them together? Sears used a system of gravity chutes and conveyor belts. Everything flowed downward. The goods would slide down spiral metal slides, gathering speed, converging on the assembly room. And here is the detail that delights the mind. To keep the schedule, the clerks in the vast warehouse sometimes wore roller skates. Imagine the sound of the wheels on the hardwood floors. Whir, whir. Young men and women gliding past rows of shelves, grabbing items, tossing them onto belts. It was a ballet of commerce. The items were boxed, wrapped in heavy brown craft paper, and tied with rough jute twine. The label was pasted on with wet gum. And then the box entered the stream. It went to the train. It went to the sorting car. It went to the rural wagon. When the carrier arrived at the farm, the shape of the package betrayed its contents. The long, flat box was a corset. The heavy, rattling box were bolts and screws. The opening of the box was an event. The twine was cut and saved. Twine was never thrown away. The paper was unfolded. And there in the kitchen was the object. It was exactly like the picture. It was a tangible proof that the system worked. Parcel Post standardized America. Suddenly, a farmer in Oregon was wearing the same overalls as a mechanic in Maine. They were using the same tools. They were playing the same songs on the same guitars. The nation was becoming a single marketplace. But amidst this industrial efficiency, there were anomalies. There were glitches in the matrix of the rules. The most famous of these is the story of the children in the mail. This is not a legend. It is a documented fact born of the vagueness of the early regulations. The regulations stated that live animals could not be mailed, with the exception of bees and day-old chicks. But the regulations did not explicitly say no humans. and the regulations said that the mail was cheaper than a train ticket. The most famous case occurred in February 1914. Let us travel to the small town of Grangeville, Idaho. A young couple, the Pierstorffs, wanted to send their 5-year-old daughter May to visit her grandmother. The grandmother lived in Lewiston, about 73 miles away. They checked the train fares. A ticket for May was expensive. They checked the parcel post rates. May weighed 48.5 pounds. The weight limit had recently been raised to 50 pounds. She was just under the limit. The postage for 50 pounds to the second zone was 53 cents. So, on a cold February morning, they bundled her up in her coat. They took her to the Grangeville post office. The postmaster, perhaps a friend of the family, perhaps just a man who followed the letter of the law, weighed her. He did not put her in a box, but he did affix the stamps. We must visualize this. 53 cents worth of Parcel Post stamps were glued to the woven fabric of a little girl's coat. They also attached a shipping tag to her buttonhole.
May was walked to the train station. She was not thrown into the mail sack. She was hand-delivered to the railway mail clerk in the baggage car. The clerk, used to handling chicks and eggs, was now in charge of a child. May sat on a pile of mail bags. The train chugged through the snowy Idaho mountains. The clerk likely shared his lunch with her. She was classified matter. When the train arrived in Lewiston, the transfer was made. The clerk handed May over to the receiving postmaster. Now, typically, parcel post was delivered by a wagon, but the Lewiston postmaster decided that this package was fragile. He did not put her in the wagon. He walked her to her grandmother's house. He knocked on the door. "Delivery for Mrs. Vinegar-Holtz, 1 grandchild, 53 cents, postage paid." It is a charming story, but it speaks to a profound level of trust. The parents trusted the federal government with their most precious possession. They viewed the poster workers not as faceless bureaucrats, but as guardians. May was not the only one. There was a boy in Ohio mailed to his grandmother. There was a baby in Pennsylvania carried by a rural carrier for a mile. Within a year, the Postmaster General issued a stern regulation. Children may not be transported as mail matter. The loophole was closed, but the image of the child with stamps on her coat remains the ultimate symbol of the parcel post era, a system so pervasive, so trusted, that it could carry anything. There is one other story of parcel post that defies belief, not because of its human cargo, but because of its sheer weight. The story of the Bank of Vernal. In 1916, a businessman named William Coldtharp wanted to build a bank in Vernal, Utah. Vernal was isolated. It was 127 miles from the nearest railroad head. He needed bricks, 80,000 bricks. To ship them by wagon freight would cost a fortune, 15 cents per pound. To ship them by parcel post would cost 7 cents per pound. The math was undeniable. But there was a limit of 50 pounds per package. So Coldtharp had the bricks packaged, 80,000 bricks, wrapped in paper, packed in crates of 50 pounds each. Day after day, the wagons arrived at the Salt Lake City post office. The clerks were horrified. The floorboards groaned. The bricks were loaded onto the mail trucks. They were driven over the mountains to Vernal. It was a logistical nightmare for the post office. The route was overwhelmed, but they had to deliver. It was the law. The Bank of Vernal was built quite literally by the mail. It is still standing today, sometimes called the Parcel Post Bank. Shortly after this, the Postmaster General hurriedly changed the rules again. No single shipment may exceed 200 pounds per day to one addressee. They had to stop people from mailing entire buildings. As we moved through the 1920s, the parcel post system settled into a steady rhythm. It became the backbone of the American economy. The zone system created a new geography. People began to know which zone they lived in. It defined shipping rates. It defined how far their world extended. The parcel post also introduced a new aesthetic to the American home: wrapping paper and string. Before this, wrapping was for shopkeepers.
Now every grandmother became a packer. Every Christmas, the kitchen table became a shipping department. We learned the art of the hospital corner fold on a box. We learned how to tie a slip knot. We learned that if you shake the box and it rattles, you need more newspaper. The sound of a package arriving became one of the great domestic joys. Thump on the porch. It is a different sound than the flutter of a letter. A letter is a whisper. A package is a statement. It occupies space. It has mass. Let us close this chapter by returning to the quiet of a winter evening in 1915. The snow is falling outside. The house is warm. In the corner, there is a large cardboard box recently arrived from Chicago. The flaps are open. Inside, nestled in wood shavings, is a new clock for the mantelpiece. It is ticking softly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The brown paper lies folded on the floor. The string has been wound into a ball and put in the drawer because you never know when you might need to mail something back. The Parcel Post System did more than move goods. It moved the center of gravity. It brought the marketplace to the fireside. It told the citizen, no matter how remote their home, that they were entitled to the same goods, the same tools, and the same comforts as the millionaire in the city, all for the price of a few red stamps. As the fire dies down and the house grows quiet, the clock continues to tick, a mechanical heartbeat delivered by a wagon down a dirt road through the miracle of the mail.